So today, lads, we're going to be talking about Stephanie White, and we're going to be talking about basically what she has been saying about coaching the Indiana Fever.
In a recent podcast appearance, Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, gave a shocking revelation about her plans for 2025, just when everyone thought they had her and the team figured out. However, this is what really got fans talking, and it wasn't what any of us anticipated.
Look, coaching the team that has 5 times more viewers than any other team, it's a big deal. It is a huge deal, and it's not easy.
Stephanie White recently spoke candidly about her plans for the Indiana Fever on a podcast. Keep in mind that this isn't just any coaching position she's accepted. She's going to be in charge of a team that attracts 5 times as many viewers as any other team in the league. Talk about pressure, don't you?
I'm looking forward to, when you think about Caitlin Clark and a generational talent, and the sometimes overlooked Kelsey Mitchell, who has been like one of the hardest workers that I've ever seen from the time I was covering her at Big Ten Network, watching her at Ohio State. And then Aaliyah Boston, who, prior to Caitlin Clark coming on the scene.
By the way, this is recent, and she mentioned Kelsey Mitchell.
The interesting thing about White's approach to this whole situation is that rather than just promoting Clark's arrival, she's talking about creating something bigger and more sustainable. It's refreshing to hear a coach think like this. White began by addressing the elephant in the room by calling Caitlin Clark a generational talent. It's not your typical coach approach. Most would just stick to what they know, but White's out here studying different styles of play from across the globe shows that she's not just thinking about next season, she's planning for the long haul. This is where it gets really interesting. That's what really caught my attention, beyond just the immediate splash of getting the #1 pick. She's been watching everything from NBA games to EuroLeague matches looking for ideas to implement. White's attention to detail and comprehension of player development are demonstrated by the fact that she not only focused on Clark, but also specifically called Kelsey Mitchell one of the hardest workers she had ever seen. This wasn't a casual remark either, as White has been following Mitchell since her Big Ten Network days.
So it's like you think about the pieces that we have and putting that all together. I hope, #1, for Caitlin, that I can be a resource. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the same stuff that she has on a global scale. Mm-hmm. Thankfully we didn't have social media at the time, which amplifies everything. But I've been through it on a smaller scale. And so hopefully I can help her navigate, some of the extra stuff, while pushing her to be her best and challenging her to step outside of her comfort zone on the floor. I have the advantage of I was an opponent, right? And so scouting her and this is what...
The way White discussed being a resource for Clark was especially intriguing. She acknowledged that although she didn't receive as much attention during her playing career, she understands the difficulties of being in the spotlight. That kind of perspective could be invaluable for a rookie entering the league with unprecedented expectations. But it's not just about Clark. White's experience as a coach and player could be crucial in helping her players navigate this. White's remarks regarding Mitchell demonstrated that she is considering the entire roster. She has been following Mitchell since her college days and is well-versed in her game. This type of in-depth knowledge of your players' strengths and weaknesses is essential for any coach, but it's especially important when you're trying to create something sustainable. Let's talk about that staff meeting. She mentioned that they had to scale back their plans, which is actually a really good sign because it shows that the coaching staff is willing to be realistic and adjust their expectations based on what they observe. Too many coaches attempt to impose their system on players who aren't prepared for it. White's approach suggests that she understands that development takes time. Her emphasis on home court advantage is also intriguing. She didn't just mention it in passing. She specifically discussed why it matters for championship competition, with the Fever likely to draw larger crowds than ever before, establishing that home court advantage could be a real factor in their development, looking at the bigger picture. She talked about pushing players to step outside of their comfort zones while also being a resource for them. This delicate balance is especially important with young players who are still finding their footing in the professional game. White's strategy appears to be intended to create something long-lasting rather than only pursuing quick success. For a young squad that is still learning what it takes to succeed at the professional level, she is discussing the importance of establishing foundations and habits that will benefit the team in the long run. Her strategy for managing Clark's transition to the professional game is especially intriguing because, having scouted her thoroughly, White is well aware of the tactics used by rival teams to slow her down. This kind of insider information could be crucial in assisting Clark in acclimating to the professional level. Her remarks regarding watching Mitchell play in China demonstrate a coach who is always observing her players and trying to find ways to help them get better. She brought up Mitchell's coach in China, pointing out that they are observing and learning from how Mitchell is used there, and that this kind of focus on detail could be essential to creating a successful program. White is obviously excited about this team's offensive potential, as evidenced by her voice. But what's more amazing is how she's tempering that enthusiasm with realism. She understands that they have work to do, particularly on defense, before they can consider contending for titles. Her statement regarding controlling expectations was one item that truly caught my attention. She is discussing preparing for competition at the championship level rather than immediately promising titles, which is a subtle but significant distinction. It demonstrates a coach who knows that professional sports success is typically earned rather than purchased. Her approach to team building seems very all-encompassing. Rather than concentrating only on what occurs on the court, she considers how to support her players in navigating all that comes with being professional athletes, which is crucial for a team that will soon be subject to an unprecedented. Highlight her discussion on researching various leagues and systems. With the offensive firepower she's inheriting, it would be easy to just rely on outscoring opponents, but White obviously understands that championship teams need to be able to get stops when it matters. This type of balanced approach could be crucial for the team's long-term success. She's a coach who's always learning and not stuck in one way of thinking or one system. She looks at what works across different levels and styles of play, trying to find elements that could help her team succeed. Considering all White spoke, it is evident that she has a vision for the future of this squad, but more significantly, she appears to comprehend the steps necessary to get there. Do you believe Stephanie White's plans for the Fever are too conservative, or is this exactly what the team needs? She isn't promising quick success, but she is offering a clear direction and purpose in all they do. If you would like to receive the most recent WNBA news and analysis, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Press that bell and that subscribe button. Every development as we approach what might be a historic 2025 season will be covered. Let's discuss the aspects of that interview that truly caught our attention. The way White is handling expectations is fascinating as well. While everyone is hoping for championships and talking about Clark, White is being extremely honest about the team's defensive standings. She flatly admitted that they finished 11th in defense last season, and that's not going to cut it. Most coaches would try to skirt around that kind of stat, but White is laying it all out there. She broke scoring records during her debut season, concentrating on laying the groundwork first. She explained why home ec, she's giving us all a masterclass in team building, explaining why they can't take off days, and what it takes to compete at the championship level. What's especially intriguing is how she intends to use Clark's game as an opponent. White scouted Clark thoroughly and knows exactly what makes her uneasy on the court. She brought up those games where teams threw various defensive looks at Clark blitzing screens. White has seen it all. Gentle hedging, hard hedging, and more crucially, she knows what worked and what didn't. What's really clever about White's strategy is that she's establishing herself as a resource for Clark, particularly when it comes to handling the limelight. White said that although she didn't have to deal with the same level of worldwide attention when she was playing, thank goodness social media didn't exist back then. She had gone through comparable experiences on a smaller scale. That kind of mentoring could be extremely helpful for a rookie who is dealing with unprecedented attention, and that's where things get really interesting. White faces an incredible challenge. How can a team with Clark's shooting ability be maximized? Let's examine what she said about Boston's offensive potential, including Mitchell's scoring prowess and their interior presence. She noted they are exceptionally talented offensively, but she isn't just wanting to let them go wild. There is a definite emphasis on structure and purpose. White has an offensive background. She actually stated that she loves offensive play, but she isn't going overboard. She discussed the need to scale back plans and acknowledge that they won't be able to execute everything in the first season, or even during training camp. This kind of pragmatic approach fosters trust among players and supporters. The contrast with earlier teams is quite illuminating. White stated that being exceptionally gifted at a young age does not guarantee back-to-back #1 picks. She has obviously learned this lesson from seeing other young teams attempt to accelerate their growth rather than guaranteeing instant success. She is discussing establishing the groundwork for champion-level competition, which is accomplished by a coach who has a long-term perspective. How she intends to manage the additional attention that comes with Clark is what's truly intriguing. White is aware that this is more than just basketball. It's about managing a phenomenon, but rather than viewing it as a burden, she sees it as an opportunity. She said that the thrill of mentoring the next generation of players surpasses any difficulties they may have. Her remarks regarding seeing Kelsey Mitchell perform in China were especially intriguing because they demonstrate that she is not solely interested on Clark. She is examining each of her players to see how they function in various systems, what works for them and what doesn't. This kind of focus on detail could be essential to creating a cohesive team rather than merely a group of gifted individuals. White made it clear that they can't stay 11th in defense if they want to compete, but what's clever about her strategy is that she's not just saying we need to improve. Rather, she's discussing specific benchmarks about starting from the middle of the pack. That's the kind of tangible goal setting that players can support. One thing that really sticks out is how White is managing the pressure of expectations. She's inheriting a team that's going to become the most watched in the league, but she's not letting that dictate her approach instead of promising quick fixes or instant success. She is discussing the steps involved in creating something sustainable. Her reference to the team staff meeting in Indiana was especially instructive since it revealed that they had to modify their plans after realizing they couldn't implement everything at once. This is not only wisdom, but also honesty. It demonstrates a coach who recognizes that long-term success stems from strong foundations rather than attempting to do everything at once. What's particularly intriguing about her approach to player development is that she's not only considering how to use Clark's current skills, she's also considering how to push her outside of her comfort zone, which is essential for any rookie, even one as talented as Clark. White seems to have a clear plan for helping her players make that transition. The way she talked about watching games across leagues shows that she's a coach who's always learning and evolving. She's not stuck in one way of thinking or one system. She's looking at the NBA, EuroLeague, and Chinese League, where Mitchell's playing. That kind of broad perspective could be exactly what the Fever needs as they prepare for the future. Let's take a closer look at what White's plans mean for the team's future. It's not just about having talented players. It's also about building a system that allows those talents to thrive together. This is where White's experience as a coach and player comes in very handy. What's especially intriguing is how White is approaching the team's offensive identity. Sure, they have Mitchell, who has been dominating in China, Clark, who has an incredible shooting range, and Boston, who has already proven she can be a force in the paint. However, White isn't just thinking about individual talents. She's thinking about how to combine these pieces into a cohesive unit. Recall her statement that watching all those games across different leagues isn't just about gathering plays or studying strategies. It's about figuring out how to maximize what could be one of the most dynamic offensive trio in the WNBA. She is aware that this won't happen right away, and the defensive focus is particularly intriguing. White didn't simply state that they were 11th in defense. Instead, she underlined that this needed to change if they wanted to contend for titles. Now that Clark is in, many people might anticipate that the Fever will simply try to outscore everyone, but Whites are making it plain that they won't compromise defense for offense. White's strategy makes even more sense when considering the team's young players. Boston is starting her second season, Clark is a rookie, and Mitchell is still honing certain aspects of her game. These athletes aren't completed goods. They require coaching to realize their full potential. One thing that particularly sticks out is how White is preparing to deal with the media attention that comes with Clark joining the team. The Fever are set to become the most watched team in the WNBA, which puts additional pressure on the team as a whole, not just Clark. White seems to understand this perfectly.